Hello and welcome back to the My First Marathon podcast. My name is Taylor, and today I'm joined by a runner whose goal always was to qualify for Boston. We talk about how he trained himself for his first marathon and got really close to qualifying, how he was able to work with a coach the second time around who taught him about different types of workouts and fueling that eventually led him to qualifying for Boston in his second attempt. And then lastly, we talked about his big day, the Boston Marathon. I really loved diving into the why of running and how this changed for him over time. I think you'll really enjoy this one. I know I did. Please welcome Jason. Jason, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Really excited to talk to you. How's your weekend going so far?
Yes, thank you, Taylor. I'm glad to be here. It's exciting to get to talk running, and I just want to say congratulations on first place in your age group on your race today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, we were just talking about it a little bit, but it was an impromptu race, so it was a nice surprise, and I appreciate that.
You bet. Always happy to root for other runners.
Yeah, that's definitely great. And we met on Instagram, and the community on Instagram is just incredible for that, for just celebrating each other and shouting each other out. So I really appreciate that. That's kind.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to hear about your story. You've got 3 years or three marathons and 9 years under your belt of running. So I'm sure we're gonna learn a lot today.
Right.
But just to take it back to the beginning, how did you get started in running in the first place?
Started, yes, about almost 10 years ago. It'll be 10 years this fall. One of my kids had an after-school running program back when they were in third grade, and the idea was that the family would do a 5K together, and it's like, okay, we'll do this, and but keep being in the atmosphere with all the runners and the excitement. I thought, well, this is fun. I mean, we really kind of just ran and walked it, and I ran in like Adidas Sambas, so like the not the best shoes to run in. My feet and legs hurt, but I was hooked with running, and so I started just running once a week, thinking I had to kind of race a 5K every week, but whether it was just by myself, but it was fun to get moving and do something that that I enjoy.
Yeah. So that's cool that your son's school had that had that come up. I feel like I haven't heard that as much, that promoting kind of getting into the race world. I'm sure that was a good example for him too, to see that pretty early on.
Exactly.
Cool. So I hear often though that the race experience really does hook you. So what hooked you from there? Were you signing up for races like crazy after that first one, or what came next for you?
It really just started as personal competition. It's like, oh, okay, I ran and walked that first 5K, and I don't remember what I did it in. It was more just to kind of be with the kid and and the family. And so I think it was maybe a few months after that. That was in the fall, and then it was maybe the springtime of the following year where we signed up for another 5K as a family. And so it was small, and I asked if I could maybe run it by myself, because I had been doing, inconsistent one time a week, running a 5K and seeing if I was maybe getting a little bit faster. And so, and I did okay. I think, it was not a large race. I think I placed within my age group. Being an older guy, it was perhaps easier to do. And then you get that competitive bug. And so it's like, oh, I wonder if I can continue to get better. Because, growing up, I did play soccer, ran track, but nothing really in the distance field or anything like that, because I really didn't love running. But I was discovering competition, and that was fueling me at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's a common kind of next step for if you played on a team sport or you played on any sort of sport early on, that you're maybe not looking for something to get back into in the sports world, but once something like running finds you, you're like, oh, okay, this is a familiar feeling that I used to experience back then. Do you feel like that sort of drive or that pull towards the competitiveness was because you were a former athlete, or was this kind of like a newer space for you?
No, I think definitely that I was a former athlete, and it had been several years since I had really done anything competitive. I think I wanted to try and find like a soccer league to join, and I tried it, and it just didn't feel like a good fit. And I felt like I was either too competitive or not enough competitive with the groups that I would find. And so the thing that was fun about running was I could just kind of compete with myself. Really, I mean, that's what it was. I could work on getting better. And of course, I did everything incorrect. I would train once a week, or maybe eventually I threw in a second day, and I would always try and race it and, learned that that was not the way to do it. But, we have to
Mhm.
start somewhere.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, you definitely have to make do a little bit of trial and error in the beginning just to kind of build your base and see what you can do. But
Right.
um that's cool. So once you ran your first couple of 5Ks, what came next from there? Were you kind of natural progression to the 10K and then the half, or did you jump straight to a longer distance?
Yeah, for me, it was very gradual. And I didn't really join a lot of races, even though I really liked that race day atmosphere. And it was fun to be a part of that. But I also was just enjoying competing against myself kind of week in
Yeah.
and week out and, um, seeing some gradual progress. And so we as a family kind of would go on Saturdays to this run club. Um, and I think that's what helped me to discover that I could run a little bit farther than 3.1 miles. And so that kind of became the natural progression for me was like, oh, wow, I can run 4 miles. And then eventually, oh, I can run 5 miles. And
Mm,
I'll always remember the first time I ran 10 miles, which, for me was such a huge accomplishment. And
yeah.
of course, I did everything wrong. I didn't hydrate, I didn't fuel. And that day I ran 10 miles and then I think I slept for 2 hours to
Yeah,
recover.
yeah.
Yeah,
It takes a lot out of you when you don't feel properly in the beginning, but you don't know any better. So it's
exactly.
just a little bit of, like we said, trial and error.
Yes.
Um cool. So that's great that you also had your family that was involved, even if it was just for kind of the 5Ks. Is that something that they continued on with you, or you kind of broke off from the pack once you started running some of those longer distances?
Yeah. I mean, occasionally, my wife will sign up for a 5K and or we'll do something as a family. But the fun thing is that my son who started on that running group still likes to run, and actually we're going to
Oh,
run in a
cool.
relay together this coming weekend. So it's fun to still have that connection with different members of the family. And but yeah, most to a degree, yes, running longer. I think that I became I guess, separated from the family in that aspect.
Sure.
Um, and then it became like, okay, well, I've done 10 miles. Can I do more? And then also realizing, well, yeah, okay, so I'll run a 10K. Let's see how that goes. Let's sign up for a half marathon and, see how that goes. And so, yeah, that gradual progression. And then at that time thinking, okay, half marathon, that's great. I don't know
Yeah.
about a marathon because that's twice a half marathon, and a half marathon was pretty exhausting.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it is hard to wrap your mind around early on. It's something that I talked about with another runner a couple of weeks back, but about how you do kind of just find your way along the way, or like build confidence along the way. It's like you're not going to go 0 to 26 miles, but you can kind of prove to yourself along the way that you can do that. But it is a little scary in the beginning, when you're not sure what you're capable of, I guess is the best way to put it.
right. Yes, that's very true.
Yeah. Yeah. So you signed up for you said that you did sign up for your first half marathon eventually, right? So
Yes.
um what was the training like? Were you following any, if you remember, any sort of training plan leading up to it, or you were just kind of doing your own thing still?
I did look into a program on a Nike Run Club app, and
Yeah.
I really didn't know much about training. I knew I didn't really want to do a lot. So there was something that was designed for 3 days a week, and I thought, okay, I can do that, like Saturday, Sunday, and Sunday on the week, on the
Hmm.
weekdays, and I kind of loosely followed it. And I had a friend at the time, well, a friend and a coworker at the time who told me, you know what? Because she had run a half marathon. You know what? All you got to do is like run up to 8 or 10 miles, and then you're pretty much ready. And I thought, okay, yeah, that makes sense because then it's just a few more miles after that.
Yeah.
And so even though I appreciated the advice, I think for me mentally, I wanted to actually have run the distance and to have felt what that's like before actually doing the race. And I kind of surprised myself. I did the distance and felt like I could maintain a pretty decent pace. So I felt ready. Mentally I was ready.
Yeah. Yeah. So you actually ran the 13 miles before you race day.
Right.
Um Not yeah. So I guess like you said, it's just something. It was just something to. So you weren't going into it with anything unexpected or unknown. Would you say?
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely the type of person that wants to know what I'm getting into fully.
Sure.
And that's where I think we'll talk about this, but getting to the marathon was more of a leap.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Well, let's get into that then. Since
Okay.
so you had kind of a slower progression building your base and getting up to the 5K distance, the 10K distance, the half marathon distance, and then when did you decide that okay, I'm going to take on this bigger challenge?
Um, I think it was after I had run maybe 3 or 4 half marathons, I believe. Maybe it's, I don't know, a couple, three, I don't know, whatever. But
Yeah.
realizing, okay, I can do the half marathon, and I can feel pretty good, okay, doing that, and I could maintain a pretty decent pace, and so I got to looking or hearing about Boston and thinking,
Mm,
you know, I wonder if I could ever be able to like qualify for that. Because looking at the pace I was running for half marathons, if I could maintain that pace for twice a half marathon, that I could qualify. And so that became the goal, kind of, I don't know, like 2017, 2018. And so I was going to sign up for the local half marathon that also has a marathon race in Denver, um, usually the third or fourth weekend in May. So that weekend is coming up. Um, and I thought, okay, let's do the half. But then I was sitting there looking at the description of the marathon and thinking, you know what? I'm going to try that marathon. And so I was sitting next to my wife and said, I think I'm going to do the marathon. And it felt like, I was just really scared to actually click that marathon button, but
yeah,
she's like, yeah, give it a try. And so I did it and signed up for it, and then realized, yeah, I can't just like, do 3 days a week. I probably need to do something more consistent. So,
sure.
looking up a training plan, I think I followed the Hal Higdon training plan,
Yeah,
realized that I would need to spend a good 3, 4 months in training. And so, yeah, it became like, okay, let's go all in on this and see how it goes. If I can actually
sure.
maintain that pace for 26.2 miles and see what it's like.
Sure. So it really was a leap for you. You were on the website with the intention of signing up for the half, and you were just thinking, "Oh, well, it'd be easy to just click on the marathon button instead and, and see what
Right.
happens."
Yes.
Um, that's cool. That's really cool. Um, cool. So you followed the Hal Higdon plan. How many more days a week was that going to incorporate into your schedule versus the last one?
Right. Yeah. So this was a 6 day training plan, 6 day week
Hmm.
with one day either cross train or rest. I decided to do rest, which I think was good decision for me.
Sure.
Um, and it was I figured that I was because there's different things you can choose from, like beginner, intermediate, or advanced, and I looked at
Right.
like the kind of like between the intermediate and advanced, and I thought, well, let's follow this one because it has speed days, it has some tempo, and I thought, yeah, I believe I could handle this, and let's see how the training goes. And and eventually it just became like, okay, this is a fun process, and um, realizing along the way it was fun just to see gradual gains throughout the training too.
Yeah. And when you were kind of moving through your training plan gradually, when did you feel like you were, I guess, when did you really feel like you could actually run a marathon? Like what distance did you hit where you were like, okay, this feels like it might be in reach?
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely you gain a lot of confidence if you get to that run on the training plan. That's that peak week towards like with say 4 weeks to go, 3 or 4 weeks to go, and it's
Hmm.
either like 18, 20 miles. And I think the plan actually had me do a couple of 20-mile runs, or maybe it was a 19 and a 20. And
Okay.
so
Hmm.
accomplishing that definitely felt good. Of course, from my perspective, it's like, well, I guess just those last 6 miles, we see what happens, right? Because again,
Right,
I
right.
liked the no, having the knowledge of what it's like to actually complete the distance, but
Sure.
I wanted to follow the plan. I wanted to do what was written, and so I was just following the running plan, but really not having much of an idea about hydration and fueling. Fortunately, I had some people that I'd come across that said, "Are you drinking water? Or are you eating anything?" And so, it was good during that process to learn the importance of, yeah, drinking some water. So I would run. I think my 20-mile run. This is not the right thing to do, but at least I had something. I ran a 10-mile loop, stopped, drank about 16 ounces of water, and then did another 10-mile loop, and then I think had a bagel afterwards, and
Sure.
so I finished it. But yeah, I think it was one of those runs that was like, whew, I am worn out now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It is funny to think back to some of your earlier runs, like when you really didn't know a ton and what you were putting your body through, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it.
right,
Just because you didn't know what you didn't know at the time, but
right.
it's in hindsight, it is pretty bizarre to think about. Yeah, I ran 10 full miles without taking a sip of water, and then chugged a little bit and tried
Yeah,
did the other 10. It's like, man.
yeah.
Um, so if you're 18, 19, is it, you said that's when you started to really feel like, okay, maybe I can do this thing. So from, half marathon distance to 18, 19, what do you feel like was kind of, or I guess what was going through your head at the time, as you were starting to build confidence?
Um, yeah, just, feeling good about accomplishing gradually increasing distances. Also, realizing that a lot of the tempo runs were helpful to maintain a pace, and even at the time, learning the importance a little bit of um, taking some easier runs slower. That was kind of
Hmm.
a hard thing to learn. I think when if we all start out on, or if, for those of us who start out on the wrong foot and don't know the benefit of running easy to gradually run faster, um, that was something that was a little frustrating
Yeah.
because you would try and keep your heart rate in a certain range, and you would slow your pace down, but then you realize that it would still bump up, and it's like, oh, I guess I have to walk to get my heart rate to
Mm.
come down. And
Hmm.
so, dealing with that for a few months prior to really diving in, I realized, okay, it is helping, and it is better to take some of these slower runs slower, and yeah, and then incorporate the tempo. But yeah, so everything was kind of coming together, and I was definitely feeling confidence, like, okay, I can do this thing. And unfortunately, I've had these people in my life tell me about drinking water and eating stuff, and you actually eating stuff while running. As a matter of fact, I had a, a person tell me, you should even just try and have a bagel with you, and eat the bagel while you're running. I'm like, okay. And so I learned that you
Yeah.
could train yourself, in your stomach to do things like that. And again, that was another confidence building aspect. It's like, oh well, I can eat stuff and still run. So that
Yeah.
that felt kind of good too.
Yeah, yeah, it's another area that you can improve on. The technical side of running is something that it's a whole other ball game. It's like you're training yourself to run the miles, but then you also have to train your stomach, and you have to train your I guess mind to tell you when to take these things and recognize patterns in your body. It's a whole thing
Right.
that it's hard to kind of wrap your head around in the beginning for sure.
Yes.
Um, so being very pace focused, I mean, you were kind of going in with the intention of I'm going to Boston qualify, or at least that was the goal
Right.
for your first marathon. So, like you said, I bet it was pretty difficult to run those slower runs and to take a step back. So what were you kind of telling yourself during that time to really get yourself to slow down a little bit and kind of recognize that it's okay to take a step back?
Yeah, I think um, the aspect of like keeping heart rate somewhat controlled or under control, because it did dawn on me that yeah, you can't just have your heart rate super elevated for that entire distance and feel like you're going to be able to maintain that. So that was an important aspect of it, and so that's where I became more accepting of it. And over time, I could see that I can maintain a lower heart rate by going slower, and I don't have to walk. I can kind of continue this slower pace. And then, for some miles here or there, I can increase the pace and maintain that pace, and then, cool down at a lower pace and see the heart rate, come back down. So I think for me, I'm, I'm, I'm a PT, so I can relate to, the anatomy, physiology of the body, and appreciate the importance of it. So I
Sure.
think that kept me grounded, I think.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure just knowing what's actually happening with your body, I'm sure was helpful through the whole
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
Cool. So once you hit the 20-mile mark, you said that you were feeling a little antsy about not knowing kind of what was on the other side of those other six. So,
Right.
uh, what did you do after your 20-mile run to kind of settle the nerves, if anything?
I mean, I remembered actually the friend I had spoken to about my first half, before I did the first half. And even though I couldn't really experience the entire distance, remembering that, if you can run 10, then you can run 13 or 13.1. So
Sure.
I kind of focused on that. It's like I ran 20. So yeah, I can run 6.2 more miles. What's that? And of
Yeah.
course, foolishly, yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but having not known, it's like, okay, yeah, I can run another 10K. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I it's more of that, again, that leap of faith. So
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
mhm,
Just kept an open mind about it. Whatever
yes,
happens is going to happen, and you're just going to kind of roll with the punches.
right.
Great. Well, if you remember, what sort of were you doing any sort of taper period leading up? Did you do any sort of nutrition on the nutrition side leading up the couple of weeks before your marathon? What did that look like?
Um, Definitely had a taper. The plan included, doing less, like I think it was the last week or two. I think it was last week actually.
Hmm.
A less intense speed day, decreasing mileage. So yeah, and I understood that. Yeah, you want to have some relatively fresh legs. You don't want to go in depleted.
Right.
But unfortunately, I didn't really know as much about nutrition. Um, I knew, growing up in through high school, like, oh yeah, it's important to have a spaghetti dinner before your game, to
Sure.
have carbs. So at least I knew about that and, tried to eat a fair amount the night before,
Yeah.
despite some nerves. But I think, yeah, I got plenty of food. So again, I didn't know as much then, but I think I did okay.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I know week taper was probably in your favor. I feel like my plan gave me too long of a taper for my
Mm,
first. So those 2 weeks I was just a little antsy, especially running
understandable.
20. Like you said,
Yeah.
it's you don't really know what's on the other side. And then having to decrease miles from there, the thing that's been keeping you busy all these months, and you just have to kind of put the brakes on. So
Yes.
it's probably a good thing that you maybe only had a week taper for your first one. But
Fair point.
um so for your marathon, was it somewhere that was local so you could kind of sleep in your own bed and then go there the next day, or was it somewhere you had to drive to?
Yeah, it's local. So we live in Denver, and so the race is in Denver. Um, I had to drive maybe 20 minutes to get there.
Yeah,
You get
easy.
there, yeah, it's super easy. Park and then get to bag drop off, and so navigating this in the dark, but it was fine. I knew where I was going, and so that was helpful for me.
Hmm.
Um, I'm definitely the type of person, as you can imagine, that wants to rehearse, like, okay, I could park here and then I would walk here. And
Sure.
so,
I'm the same way.
I like to know the details, right? And
Yes.
so, yeah, I was, definitely nervous, excited. I think I know I got up earlier than typical because I'm excited and, getting ready and, getting the bag check, getting to the start line, seeing some friends. I think that was also a really fun thing about doing a local race. And it's a big weekend in Denver. Colfax weekend is a big weekend in Denver. And so, it was fun to see friends, shake hands, give hugs, high fives, kind of jump around a little bit and not know what I'm
Yeah.
doing. But I did hear from somebody like, you don't really need to do much of a warm up because you're running 26.2 miles. I'm like, yeah, good point. So,
Yeah, you're
I
gonna
just
be
kind of,
warm.
yeah, I just kind of ran in circles a little bit, like, yeah, this is fun. Woo, I'm super
Yeah.
excited. And, and then it's like, okay, we're ready. Um, I think at the time it is 2019. So of course, pre-pandemic, we had no
Hmm.
clue what was coming the next year. But
Sure.
yeah, and it was a perfect day for running. It was cloudy. It was, um, I think it was maybe 48 degrees, if I remember from looking at what Garmin told me. But
Yeah.
um, perfect day for running. I, had a short sleeve shirt, but with gloves. That's just me. I always wear gloves because my hands get cold easily.
Hmm. Hmm.
I did not have a handheld water bottle, which is what I do use a lot with a lot of races these days. I was just going to rely on water stations, and I think I was going to grab a gel or two here or there. I had some
Hmm.
friends that was going to be there at mile 14 with some water and some salt tablets, and I thought, why would I need salt tablets? But I'm glad they had them because that helped me
Sure.
finish the race.
Sure.
So yeah, I was really excited. Different people were going to be different in different places. My family was going to be at like mile 20, and then at the finish line. So I think at the time too, I had some different friends that were going to be at different spots along the course, and so it was really great to see them along the course too.
That's so helpful. And
Yeah.
you can be a little strategic about if you're close enough with them about where you're going to put them to if you know where
Yes.
kind of your miles are where you're going to struggle a little bit more. So it's huge, I would say, to have a community around you that's going to be at different points.
Yes.
And even better that they had feel for you too. They had salt
Thank
tablets and
God.
sounds like some water and things
Yeah,
like that.
right.
Yeah. Was
Right.
so that it doesn't sound like that was something that you intended to take. They had kind of just brought them and said, "Here, take these."
Yes, I remember my friend at mile 14, she and her husband had run marathons before.
Yeah.
So they knew and that they knew that I would need that. And I thought, well, that's a good, okay, that's great. Thank you. And oh man, I was so glad that they were there because yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely needed the water and I definitely needed the salt tablets.
Yeah. Looking back on that, and we'll get into some of your other marathons as well, but do you wish that you brought your handheld or a pack of some sort just so you had a little bit more control?
Yeah, I definitely have learned that that is what really helps me uh, currently for success is having water
Mhm.
with me and having gels, having salt tablets, having ibuprofen, you know, so having
Yeah.
different things and knowing when I need to take that to set me up for the best possible success. And so, yeah, again, that was some things that I learned, especially later with coaching and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. So for the race, where did you feel like your best miles were, and where did you feel like maybe you hit a wall, or your not? I guess I shouldn't say worst miles, but where things got a
Yeah,
little bit trickier.
right. Definitely the oh man, like miles 1 through 8 were just a you know a dance party. You know, we're all excited, smiling. I felt great.
Yeah,
And I think you know mile 10, I was starting to not really like a gel that I had gotten. You know, it's like oh I don't know about this, and my stomach wasn't feeling happy with it. But you know, I was doing okay. And then I think at mile 13, actually, I was so the marathon course runs along with the relay course. So that there's like for the relay, there's a team of 5 people, and they're
mm,
running the
hmm,
marathon course. So I was actually running with some relay people, and you know they were saying like, you know, like what's your pace? And I said, oh yeah, blah blah blah, and you know, feeling good. You know, like oh yeah, that's great. You know, glad you're feeling good. And so you know, um, so it was fun to be able to like be running with some people who were running the relay and
yeah,
feeling kind of feeling as good as they were feeling, even though I was at mile 13 and they were probably the second leg of their relay.
sure,
Um, and then yeah, so you know, I remember seeing my friends at mile 14, getting the water and salt and feeling good. Coming around, I think around mile 16, seeing another friend, but starting to feel a little bit of a cramp and
mm,
and thinking, what's that? But drinking water and that helped. I'm like, okay, good. I'm glad I have this water. Um, I was feeling still pretty good because you get a downhill surge to mile 20, which is just outside of the Denver Broncos stadium. And, you know, seeing my family. So that was a big shot of energy. And,
yes,
you know, but starting to think like, wow, okay, now I'm getting to that point where I got 6 miles to go and that's unknown territory. But, you know, mile 21, mile 22, feeling okay, you know, like this is okay. Still, you know, mostly maintaining pace. But then right after 22, 23, there's this uphill climb. And that's when I got my first hamstring cramp.
mm,
And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was like boom. And so I had to start walking. And I'm like, dang it, you know, there goes the pace, you know.
sure,
but
sure.
but then I thought, well, I wonder what this salt tab does. So
Let's
I
try this
ate the
thing out.
salt tablet. Yeah. And so amazingly enough, I had the salt tab and a little bit of water and it helped. So I could start running again. And not that I was back on pace, but it felt good to be running again. And so for the Colfax Marathon, you finish in City Park, but you enter the park and there's still about a mile plus to go. So I remember, I think I had another cramp before the park. And then once I got in the park for a while, I had another cramp. So, you know, and I just kind of, again, fortunately, they gave me more than one salt tablet because I'm just kind of chewing on these salt tablets and it was giving me whatever I needed to settle the cramps down and to keep going.
Sure.
And so, you know, I made it, you know, crossed the finish line. I actually remember the person who gave me the advice about the bagel was there and I could see her cheering. And she was really excited for me because she thought I was going to qualify because my time was like, I think 3:28. And
Wow.
so she thought I needed to get sub 3:30. But for me at that time, I needed to get sub 3:20. And,
Mm,
but, you know, so I was happy to finish, but,
sure.
you know, a little discouraged that I couldn't quite maintain pace. And, but then other people said, you know what, you're really that close, you know, to even be 8 minutes shy. You're really close. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. So I thought, yeah, let's put that on the shelf for now. And then let's see what we can do from there. And
Sure.
then, yeah. So, and then the pandemic came.
Yeah.
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 Right.
Bad timing after your first marathon, that's for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that is a lot of pressure, I think, to put on a first marathon is to
Yeah.
Boston qualify. I mean, like even to be 8 minutes from it, that's quite the accomplishment, I would say, for your first one. It's especially like you said, not really knowing a ton about fuel and kind of relying on like aid stations and things like that. Like, what I just have to commend you for that because that's incredible to come out the gate like that for your first one.
Thank you. I mean, looking back, yes, I definitely feel it was a really great accomplishment. Sure.
Yeah, yeah. Great. So set kind of set the tone for your marathon experience. So I guess one question before we kind of moved to pandemic and I'm sure kind of the lapse that put you in when you were cramping up when you I'm sure you were obviously you took the time to walk you were still going to push through the whole thing but what through training for your first marathon like what was your why to finish that and did that come up during that moment?
Yeah. My why was really, to qualify, right? So
Yeah.
again, it's like I think it was the competing with myself aspect. There was a time standard that I knew that I wanted to chase.
Yeah.
And so, I was chasing it and having success with it for half marathons and thinking like, okay, that became the goal or my why. I wanted to chase this, see how I can see what I can do in getting to that. But I also realized that it was enjoyable going through the process of running, training, seeing progress through the process too.
Yeah. Yeah. So your why kind of it was always there, but it kind of shifted a little bit. It sounds like it was you want to still qualify, but you also want to enjoy the progress in the process of the whole thing, which I think is important.
Yes,
The feeling of the finish line is only it's finite. It only lasts for a little bit, and then you're back to the progress of the whole thing. So I think it's important to fall in love with that for sure,
yes.
for sure. Okay, so then the pandemic hit. Was that wait what month was your first marathon in? Was it like end of 2019?
Well, actually, it's a good question. It's May, so it
Okay.
didn't hit right away. But I thought, okay, yeah, I got pretty close. Maybe let's think
Yeah.
about a marathon for 2020. And I think I had signed up for one, but it of course got canceled because it was going to be in the spring. And so that put a damper on everything. So I would do some virtual races to kind of give me a goal to work towards, and that was fun for one time. And it's like I really just want to be in that atmosphere because I really
Yeah.
loved the atmosphere too. um, and so um, fortunately in Denver they did start to do some organized races in October of 2020. And so I signed up for one, and it was a 5K. Realized that I'd kind of lost some fitness because I was running, but more just doing fun, easy runs, which is,
Sure,
a
sure.
great way to pass some time. And but I wasn't doing any speed work or any, different training aspects. And so that helped me realize that I needed to do that too. And so yeah, kind of working through that, entering a few, local races, wearing masks and all that.
That
But
had to
still,
be brutal.
yeah, it was brutal, but it was fun to be back in it. It was fun to, see friends and see, uh, just having it back was such a joy. And so I thought, okay, um, let's think about another marathon. Let's I wanted to kind of get back into it. Let's, do a couple halves and see how that goes, and then think about what it would be like to run another marathon with that goal of still wanting to try and qualify for Boston. So
Yeah.
I wanted to do it better. I wanted to, okay, what can be better? Fortunately for me, it was a year where I was going to age up, so I didn't need the sub 320. I needed a sub
Mm,
325.
nice, yeah.
I'd heard like, hey, people, have coaches, and that makes a difference too. And so different things that I realized could be beneficial and helpful.
Sure, sure. So did you hire a coach right at the start of when you decided to train for your second marathon?
Yes, it was before I actually had signed up. I wanted to start
Okay.
out with a coach and kind of work with them and then progress with them. And so yeah, sign up with a coach first. Sarah, she's local here with the Elevate Your Running group, and not only did I work with a great coach, part of the great thing was working with a fun community and getting to know um, other runners who had some similar goals, but also just running for the enjoyment of running and
Sure.
being together as a community. And so it was good to learn many things working with Sarah. And like, okay, not only do you want the consistency, but yeah, let's talk about hydrating every mile and fueling every so miles. And it's like, oh wow, what a concept, and doing runs differently and tailoring it based on what I was able to do. And so it was really
Yeah.
great to have that individualized coaching. The one thing I loved about it the most was we would do like group track workouts Wednesday
Mm,
evenings, and that was a lot of fun because we would, they would be tough workouts, but we could all work at it together and encourage each other. And again, I think that's what I enjoy is rooting for people and like, yeah, you can do it, and let's go. And so it was a lot of fun. It was fun to cheer people on, but also, receive that encouragement and then have that, direct, like, okay, how'd you feel with that one? Let's
yeah.
think about doing it this way for this 800. And so really, really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. So you kind of got, I mean, you obviously you had a coach, but you kind of got to bounce ideas off of each other too about what was
Yep.
working for them, what was working for you, what wasn't working, and kind of progress together. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Did you have people on your team or in your group that also were looking to Boston qualify? So you got to kind of relate to them that way too?
Yes. What was a lot of fun was, yeah, one person in particular was there doing track workouts, and also another person, but lived in like a kind of farther away area, um, was training with our coach, and I had met her at a half marathon that we did, and so it was fun to connect. And we all realized we were going to run the same marathon in the hopes of qualifying for
Oh,
Boston.
cool.
Yeah, and so it was May of 2022 that it was a fun event because a lot of the different people from the team were either going to run the marathon or the half marathon. And so it was in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is about an hour north of Denver. And I think most of us stayed the night. We met for dinner. It was a great, time to kind of ease some nerves too, and
Sure. Yeah.
talk about, you know, strategies and things like that, and how we're going to get to the buses and what time we need to get there and everything. So it was good to have, for me especially, to have people to,
Yeah.
you know, uh, be with, so that we all kind of ended up in the same area and everything. So
Yeah, that is great that you all decided to run the same race so you can kind of coordinate together. Um, so what was the how long after your first marathon was this second marathon?
yeah, almost right at about 3 years. So 2019
Wow.
to then 2022. Um, and yeah, it's interesting to have like kind of reached a peak with marathon training in 2019 and then kind of go through some different aspects of training. And then I think I started with Sarah in October of 2021. So I
Mm-hmm.
was able to build some base until then getting into the marathon cycle. I think it was first part of January for an early May race. And
Gotcha.
so, again, good to have that base, and then to be in the cycle for a few months, building then up to the marathon.
Sure. Yeah. So what do you feel? I mean, you mentioned a couple of things there, but what do you feel like working with a coach once you were in your marathon cycle? What do you feel like working with a coach and doing things that way taught you different than what you were taught your first time around?
Well, definitely highlighted the importance of kind of being an appropriate heart rate zone. So taking easy days easy and doing
Hmm.
hard days hard. So not only like 4 or 5 of the 6 days that I would run, they were easy days, recovery days. And so definitely learning the importance of recovery, and not only just running recovery, but sleep recovery,
Yeah.
and things
Yeah.
like that. And the importance of, even recovering with hydration and, and fuel, like fueling better before a run, and then fueling well after the run with protein and things like that to repair muscle. Um, So just so many great things that I learned with, kind of the complete picture: the hydration, the fueling, salt, and then the process of running. The easy runs, the hard days. So strength training, of course, becomes important. I
Yeah.
learned more about that as well, and keeping the body feeling good with doing core and hip strengthening and everything like that too.
Yeah. Yeah, so kind of took the like natural talent that you had the first time around and just filled in the gaps and could fine tune a few things and made you even better, it sounds like.
100% yes.
Yeah, that's great. So second marathon day rolls around. Kind of walk us through that experience. What was it like, and maybe what was different from your first time around?
Okay. Yeah. So definitely different being in a place where you have to sleep somewhere other than your own bed,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
but comfortable because again we were there as a team. It was great to have that aspect. Um, knowing that I was going to meet people at the buses and, drive up together because it's in a canyon. So you literally are driving more than 26.2 miles up this canyon.
Oh
So
wow, I
you're
didn't
in
think
this
about
big
that.
bus
Yeah.
and yeah, it's kind of windy and you're feeling kind of nauseous by the time you get there. But fortunately, your nerves settle down and you're okay. but,
Sure, sure.
but again, good that we could all kind of meet there. Um, the three of us that were running the marathon, we were there. We got some pictures and the excitement. I was actually gonna um, Matt was a fair amount faster than me and Pooja, but so he was starting up a little bit farther ahead, and but Pooja and I were going to run the first mile together, and that was a lot of fun to kind of just still settle some nerves, and then I kind of went ahead from there. So yeah, it was again all the advantages. I was going up in age group. I hired a coach. It was a downhill course, so I was trying to do all the things I could to try and qualify because at that time that was my why. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So what were the results of that one? Did you end up qualifying for that one? And what miles kind of felt good, and then where did you maybe struggle again?
Yeah, it was a great day. I mean, again, weather was good. It was a little bit kind of partly sunny, cloudy.
Yeah.
The temperature at the top of the canyon was, I think, 38 degrees, which it was a little chilly, but it kind of warmed up and didn't get super hot during the day, so that was good. Um, the first 13 miles were a blur
Yeah.
because really with this marathon, it was there were no spectators until mile 17 because it's
Oh
literally
wow.
canyon road. Yep.
Yeah.
So the only spectators that were there were the people at the aid stations, and that was great because it's like, yeah, you're doing great. Eat that gel, drink that water. I had my
Sure.
handheld at that time because I was better with hydrating. Um, saw my coach at mile 17, and that was great. She checked in. How you feeling? I'm feeling good. Maintaining the paces. Boom, boom, boom. And
Yeah.
then I think I saw my family around mile 21. At that point, I had some slight mishap where I reached for, I think, a gel or water, and then kind of bonked my hand on a trash bin. So
Mm.
I realized that it was bleeding, and
Mm.
I was kind of bleeding on my handheld, but it was fine. I mean, it was just nothing bad.
It can't go too
But
perfect. Something's
yeah,
got to
right,
happen, right?
exactly. So when I saw my family at mile 21, I was actually figuring I could be done with my handheld because I knew I was going to see my coach again around mile 23 and ask for water. So I tossed them my gloves and my handheld, and I remember my youngest saying, "There's blood on me." Like, yeah, it's okay, don't worry about it.
Yeah. No
Yeah,
stress. Yeah.
right. It's fine. And then so yeah, I was still feeling pretty good around mile 21. I'd been taking salt and ibuprofen as needed, and feeling great. I think my biggest accomplishment during this marathon was I didn't drop anything. Because
Mm.
I practice it. I practice getting stuff out of the bag while running, and taking salt, taking ibuprofen. Um, and then at mile 23, though, I was starting to feel it. My pace was slowing a little bit. It was great to see my coach at that point. She gave me some water. She even kind of ran with me a little bit, which was really encouraging. And
Mm.
it was really great. And I knew, I mean, I was on pace. I was doing terrific, but I knew that last 5K was going to be tough, and it sure was. But I remember looking at my watch. I think with about maybe a mile and a half to go, and thinking, I'm going to do this. I feel it. And it's such a great
What a cool
journey.
feeling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then I'm at that point, I'm really not counting miles. I'm counting laps. It's like, okay, I've got 6 laps to go. And then, you get to mile, like kind of between mile 25 and 26, it's like, okay, I think I got 3 laps to go. And then you get to mile 26, 1 lap to go. And
Yeah.
so it's just kind of that countdown. And I remember you kind of enter into the town of Fort Collins. You start to run on some city blocks. And I think I think I had maybe a couple more turns to go. And I just remember this kid, like right at mile 26, you got 2 turns to go. I'm like, yes, thank God, because I was
End in
definitely feeling
sight.
it. Yeah, right. And I mean, I knew my time was great. I knew I was going to make it. I was just feeling, really tired and fatigued, not cramping though, because I did things well. And,
Yeah.
see the finish line. I see my family. I want to give them, I want to give them a high five. They don't want to touch my bloody hand. That's okay. Across the finish line, and I'd done it. I think I got like 3:15:30,
Wow.
and so yeah, I was very excited. I look back and I think that's one of my biggest athletic highlights. Just
Sure.
working towards that goal, achieving that goal. It was, great day, great feeling until I started walking again.
Yeah.
And
And then
yeah,
you have to walk it out, and
right,
it's the short-term memory loss of the whole thing. You just
right,
it hurts for a second, and then you gotta you move past it.
right. Yes, I
Yeah.
clearly remember telling my wife I never want to do that again, but of course I
Famous last
did.
words.
Yeah, right. And so, but yeah, it was a great day, great feeling. Definitely a lot of fond memories from that day.
Yeah, that's incredible. Oh my god. Yeah, I just I got chills just thinking about that
Oh,
feeling.
thanks.
So,
Yeah.
what when you saw the time? I mean, you obviously you said, did you have like a watch that you were paying attention to, or your phone where you were tracking? So you knew that you were going to qualify, but when you saw it, on the screen,
Yeah.
what was the feeling like?
Yeah, it was like, it's official. And it's like, I did it. And the fun thing was I got to celebrate that with the two other athletes, Matt and Pooja. And so, they both also qualified, I think, with the same amount of time buffer. So it was
Mm,
really, really a fun feeling of accomplishment with the three of us too. And so, like I say, just a fun day, not only to qualify myself, but then to have friends that did the same, and that just really added to it so much.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
incredible. That's great. And you also got to share it with the people that you came with. It's even better.
right.
Um, Great. So, I mean, I don't want to skip too far ahead because I would love to hear kind of what came directly next. But what were you thinking from there? Time for Boston. We got to Let's get this going. We got to knock out the other side of this goal, or what was going through your head afterwards?
Yeah, definitely. It's like, I mean, there's the things like, okay, we time will need to pass, and then I'll need to register. And there's always the wonder of like, is the buffer enough? And at for 2023, that a buffer was not necessary. So that was good. Not
Hmm.
eventually you just didn't have to worry about it. And so yeah, I was able to register, and then it's like the logistics of planning that, because I'm used to doing every race local and hadn't
Yeah.
really done a travel race, and so again, it was fun to look forward to that and plan it and prepare for it, But then I realized this is my third spring marathon. I am not. I'm kind of getting tired of training in the dark and cold of winter,
Yeah. Very
So
true.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, still, it was great to have that as still my why.
Yeah.
I get to train for Boston. This is exciting, and you know all my family, like my parents, my wife's parents, my brother, we were all planning on being there together, and so that was definitely going to be a fun aspect of it as well. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Along the way, I think I ran the Colfax 10-mile race. I want to say it was maybe 2 or 3 weekends after. And that was a great thing to learn, that I need time to recover from a marathon, because here
Mm,
I'm thinking like, oh, it's just a 10-mile race, but my coach has said, let's do it as a progression run, not as a race. Very wise, because I ran the last mile or two at what I would want to have run the whole race at, and that was a struggle. And I realized, yeah,
mm,
my body was not fully recovered. So again, my coach was very smart with that. Um, so again, things you learn along the way. Um, you know, Always we're learning after marathons, right? Or
sure.
leading up to marathons and after marathons. So yeah, there
Yes.
were races here and there to continue to work on speed and endurance. But yeah, then um, turn the page to 2023, and here we are. We're Boston training. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's how cool. And Boston, what just for everybody that doesn't know, what month does Boston fall in?
yeah. It's on Patriots Day in Massachusetts, which is like I think a state holiday where everybody in the state of Massachusetts has off. So I think it's the third Monday of April,
Mhm.
um, and so that's kind of weird to run on a Monday. Number one, I
Sure,
think
yeah.
for me, I felt the best on the Sunday, leading up to the race, and then Monday was a bit of a different story. But yeah, it's different, and people who were smarter than I was, and my coach even said, "Yeah, you maybe should try some long runs on a Monday." I'm like, "That's a good idea, but I'm going to do them on Sunday or Saturday or whatever."
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, yeah, but
Yeah, that's something I haven't thought about because I don't think there's ever been any other race that I've come across that's been on a Monday, but I guess it
right.
would probably be a little bit different to run on a Monday than a Sunday, right? I would assume.
Yeah, different mindset for sure. Even though
Yeah,
it's like a holiday
yeah,
in the city, but yeah, different mindset for sure.
yeah, yeah. So what was training for Boston like different from training for Boston qualifying?
All about hills.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
training for the Colorado Marathon, since it was downhill marathon, um, so you're training downhill, which you feel like you're flying. Boston is a lot of hills starting at around mile 16, and so it's like let's run up and down some hills, and so that was really good preparation. I felt like I was well trained for hills because we would do hill strides and long runs up hills and speed work up hills. So yeah, lots of hills.
And did you like that, or was that just like was it a mindset shift for you where you just had to learn to like it, or did you struggle with that in the beginning?
You have to learn to like it. I had a
Yeah,
friend that I run with on Sundays. Like, how are you going to do this? You're used to doing downhill training. Like, yeah,
yeah,
I know. Shut up. It'll be fine.
yeah,
So yeah, it was definitely a mindset shift for sure.
yeah, yeah. How cool. How did Boston go? I mean, did it hit your expectations? Was it incredible? What did you struggle with anything? What was it like?
Well, being the competitive person that I am, I wanted to do. I had goals of PRing, goals of qualifying again, and
Yeah,
and a goal of finishing and being grateful for that. I hit the C goal, finishing and being grateful. I was on pace
yeah,
to qualify again, but unfortunately, I didn't do things as well just because you know, it was a lot. I mean, it's just big, it's bigger, it's a big crowd, big, so many things leading up to that. And I just was wanting to experience all these moments. So I wasn't as well focused. I didn't, carb load as well the 3 days leading
mm-hmm.
up to it. I didn't do the salt as well as I normally would do. So I ended up, I was on pace to qualify again. I needed a 325, but I cramped, I think, at mile 25 and had to walk for a fair amount. But I did finish, running, but definitely at a slower pace. And I got 327. So, pretty good,
Close
but
enough. Yeah,
yeah, right. And
yeah,
so, of course, I was disappointed at the time. But
sure.
looking back now, a year afterwards, it's like I look back and it's like, you know what? I did it and it was fun and I'm glad I got to do it. Do I
Yes.
want to do it again? Not really, but I did it and it was fun,
Yeah,
and I'm glad that
yeah.
my family was there to share it with me too.
Definitely, definitely. And
Yeah,
I'm sure your family had kind of, I mean, obviously they followed along your whole journey. They knew that your goal in the beginning, your why was to Boston qualify. And I'm sure that was cool for everybody to see you finally accomplish that goal,
right,
regardless of how, how it all ended up.
right, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So
But
after you,
oh,
oh,
sorry,
sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead. I was just gonna say, definitely after that race, when
Yeah.
I first saw my wife, I said, I am never doing that again. And she's holding me to it. I have not signed up for another marathon yet.
Gotcha. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was going to be my next question
right.
actually. Is once you kind of hit your goal, the whole reason you've been doing all of these marathons, was that kind of an endpoint for you, or were you ever thinking I might do another one?
Yeah, right. I realized that marathons are hard. I mean,
Yeah.
that, right? And definitely we learn that, but it's also we love it too, right? So
Yes.
I know for sure I'm not done with marathons, but I'm definitely honoring the agreement of, yeah, I did not I'm not signing up for a marathon in 2024.
Mhm.
I've considered one maybe at the end of 2025, but we'll see.
Mhm.
I'm definitely not ready to dive back into it. And yeah, I'm kind of realizing that I've needed a shift.
Sure.
My why was all about qualifying and running Boston, and so I've kind of been a little bit lost, maybe.
Sure.
Still doing races and enjoying the atmosphere and things like that, but um, maybe needing to take a step back from the competitiveness. And so that's been a good thing to realize. And actually, I was running with a friend yesterday, and he's asking me like, "Hey, how's it going? How's running?" You're still consistent, but are you loving it? I'm like, yeah, I'm loving it, but I'm just it's different. And he's like, well, what's your why? I'm like, yeah,
Mm.
that's a great question. And it's like, and I realize it's running with you guys. It's running with
Yeah.
people. It's having opportunities to run and chat and enjoy that social aspect of it. So yeah, that's kind
Yeah.
of been the shift. And that's been, I mean, even though I was enjoying that, again, I still do a lot of different group runs with the Elevate community and enjoy it. I love the community. Um, and but then realize, I guess I had to completely verbalize that. It's like, yeah, it's the community, it's the people. That's my why. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. You just have to find your new one. You had your why that you were hanging on to for so long that
Right.
you gotta, I guess, reframe it a little bit.
Exactly.
Um, but it's funny. I mean, I feel like this is why a lot of us love running so much, is because everybody's goals can be so different and success can look different person to person, but it can also look different to you at different stages in your life. Like Boston
Right.
was your success then, but who knows what your success looks like now, and it's all independent. So it's, I think it is what you set out for yourself for sure.
Yes, exactly. I mean, and I think it's important to realize that things change, and that's okay.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Hmm.
Definitely. Got to be adaptable. That's for
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, thank you for walking through all three of your marathons. That was great to listen to. I enjoyed it a lot.
Oh, thank you.
Um, I guess just a couple kind of closing questions
Hmm.
I've been sort of asking at the end, just to I've been interviewing people from all stages of running, from people who have ran only one marathon, people who are running 100 plus. So, curious what your personal favorite kind of fuel is. I know you mentioned the salt tablets, but is there anything outside of that that you're really liking?
Um, Great question because it changes.
Yeah.
I try to whatever is on the course. I'm going to try and train my stomach to accept that. So in other words, I want to have the fuel with me. But if I drop one, or if I feel like I don't have enough or need another, that whatever's on the course I can take and
Mm-hmm.
be good with that. So I've done a lot of different things. I've done Spring Energy, or Spring, the awesome sauce, which is great. It's basically just high powered applesauce, but
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
amazing. And Honey Stinger, Martin. I think I've done Huma too. So yeah, lots of different things. But I think that one of the most important things I learned with coaching was, train yourself. Go on those training runs and take the fuel, um, and so that you're used to it, so that you know that you can tolerate it. So, I mean, there's so much to training, more than just running. It's
Definitely.
training so many systems of your body. So, yeah,
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. Trial and error is huge. I always
right,
kind of give that disclaimer that, we're collecting data because I know there's a lot of newer runners that listen, and it's helpful to have a few ideas, but definitely test out your own fuel
right.
and make your own decision for what's going to work for you. Um, cool. So yeah, changed a lot over time. And then what about shoes? What have been your favorite shoes over time? Do you use different shoes for racing versus training? What do you like?
Yeah, I've started out like with New Balance, just because I had no clue and thought that that was cool. Because like, there's a group in Boulder that's sponsored by New Balance, and so it's like, oh yeah, let's try those shoes. And so I was very early on. I took off the Adidas Sambas and realized that that was not the best thing to run in. So
Yeah.
picked up a pair of New Balance, and they were fine. But then realized, let's try something maybe a little bit different. I went to a running store and they said, you know what, why don't you try these Asics? And they felt great. And I really liked them. Would be consistent with that. And then my coach had recommended like Nikes, trying to see how I would feel even with like alpha flies to see if that would help. Again, all the advantages, right? So I went to just training runs in Pegasus, and then would do races with alpha flies, and felt that they were helpful for me. I mean, I
Mhm.
realize there's some debate. Is it all mental? Well, at least it helped me mentally. So, but yeah,
Sure.
I feel like
Whatever
there's,
works.
yeah, right, exactly. And actually, I find myself kind of drifting back towards ASICs again. Uh, and I think again, we all have kind of different feet. It's funny. Some
Yeah.
people will come to me as patients and say, "Well, what shoe should I wear?" And it's like, well, there's so many different brands that fit so many different aspects of feet, whether you're narrow or flat or wide or whatever. And so really the people at the running stores, they're really good. I mean, they know how to kind of assess your feet and
Yeah.
say, yeah, let's try this and see how you feel on it, with it. Get on the treadmill, run with it, see how you feel, and so you get it tested out. And so that's usually my advice is, yeah, see what works for you. And yeah, for me, Nikes and Asics have worked. So
Cool. Yeah,
yeah,
and I know a lot of these running stores, of course, they'll measure your feet and get you fitted for something that's specific to you, but a lot of them have great return policies too. So if you
yes,
buy them and you run in them and they just something just doesn't feel right, definitely don't feel like you need to push through that because I mean, you're the physical therapist, you're the expert here, but I would think that would lead to injury, pushing yourself
exactly.
through shoes that are not the right fit.
Right. No, you don't want to run with pain.
Yeah. And that kind of I guess leads into to my next question, which is since you are a physical therapist, you work with a lot of runners who are maybe injured and trying to recover to get back into running. What's some I guess advice you could give to if somebody's experiencing an injury or going through something painful and they're trying to get back on track?
Yeah, well, definitely if you're feeling pain with running, stop. And of course, my advice would be go see a physical therapist, let them
Yeah,
assess your running mechanics, where we could see if there's certain weaknesses in hips or knees or ankles, and what are some specific ways to strengthen those areas so that you're, uh, running more supported through your hips or through your knees. One thing I've learned is that, yeah, a lot of things can be corrected through some different ways to strength train and work on muscle balance, core, hips, things like that.
yeah. I'm sure that's the last thing runners want to hear is they have to prioritize strength training. I know a lot of runners don't like to
Right.
incorporate strength training in, but it's important for sure.
If you want to keep running, you got to strength train.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
very true, very
Yeah.
true. Great. Well, I guess my last question for you is just
Mhm.
what's coming up next for you, if anything? Do you have any races on the calendar you're currently working towards, or any group runs coming up that you're excited for?
Yes. So next weekend is the Colfax Marathon weekend, but I'm going to be on a relay team.
Oh,
So
awesome.
me and four other people, four other friends. Um, and one of the people on that team will be my son, and I get to hand off to him. It'll be great.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. Well, that's exciting. I'm excited to see how it goes.
Thanks.
And then for anybody that wants to follow along with you, where can we find you?
On Instagram. It's Dr. J, so underscore dr small d small r period underscore jay. Um, and that's where I am. I am a little less frequent with posting, but there'll definitely be stuff about Colfax Weekend on there coming up in a week. So
Cool, cool. Well,
yeah,
excited to follow along. And again, thank you so much for walking us through your journey. It was really great to hear about the whole thing from working towards Boston to having these goals and then finally completing it. So awesome, awesome to have you on.
thank you, Taylor. I really appreciate this time. So much fun talking running with you.